Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we're going to take a quick look at the full moon in Libra, which is perfecting today, Wednesday. And we're going to just look at it from a few different angles because I think you guys know sometimes I focus a lot on new moons and full moons. They don't tend to be I tend to focus on major transits a little bit more than new and full moons. But one of the reasons that I want to focus on this one is because this um, this full moon is coming right before an eclipse in Aries that will then start to shift the eclipse cycle itself over the summer into the signs of Libra and Aries. So I want to talk a little bit about that axis today and some of the archetypal themes you might start to notice in your life in general, regardless of where it falls, in what particular houses it falls in, which we will eventually look at when we do horoscopes on the eclipses with the nodes changing over the summer, which we will be doing. So anyway, before we get into it today, don't forget to like and subscribe, share your comments. If you want to find a transcript of today's talk, as always, it's on the website, nightlightastrology.com. If you have a story to share ever, use the hashtag grabbed or send us your stories grabbed at nightlightastrology.com. We've got a grabbed episode coming up on tomorrow, I think it is. So hope you guys will enjoy that. We are also in, it is enrollment season now. You can visit my website, nightlightastrology.com, and check out the courses. If you go up to the courses tab, the first year course starts again on June 10th. So or June 11th, my bad. You'll see all the information you need about the course, to what the course includes. We'll be getting into more detail about the course as we get closer to registration. Right now, I'm just sort of raising awareness that the course starts again soon. And one thing that I want you guys to check out for sure, if it would be helpful, is the need-based tuition option. We have a limited number of those contracts available for students who could use a little help making the program more financially accessible. So if that's you, you'd really like to study astrology formally in a community for a year, maybe start a practice of your own, or just deepen your love and understanding of astrology, then check out that need-based tuition option, because we try to make sure that people who are experiencing financial hardship, maybe you're a single parent, you're working part-time, you're a student, that you could have a rate that is a little bit easier on your budget. So if that's you and you need a little help, check out the need-based tuition option. Email us if you have any questions, info@nightlightastrology.com. Year 2 and horary also start in June for students who are already enrolled. You might want to check out those advanced programs. Okay, let's take a look at the real-time clock and have a look at this full moon. So the full moon is here in Libra, and it is, of course, the full moon will always be exactly opposite the sun. So we have full moon across the Aries-Libra axis as the sun is coming into a conjunction with Jupiter. That will be happening next week. That'll be a big focus of ours in next week's astrology. And the next new moon that we have after this full moon will be a solar eclipse at the very last anaretic degree of Aries, the 29th degree, as the nodes are just still at the end. Well, they move backwards. So for them, they're at the beginning of Taurus, but almost the end because of their backward or retrograde movement. The nodes of the moon will be moving into Aries and Libra over the summer. And so this full moon, followed by the solar eclipse in Aries, is significant because we're starting to transition into eclipse seasons that will focus on Libra and Aries in general. So what are some things to watch for given this dynamic? There are a few things that come to mind, and I don't have my handy list for today. I wanted to speak a little bit more off the cuff. First of all, whenever the Libra-Aries axis is being activated, and remember that's this full moon, that's the eclipse of the new moon, and then where the eclipses are heading starting over the summer when the nodes change signs, you will always get themes of independence and individuation versus cooperation and relationship. You have a Mars versus a Venus sign. They are both important, and they form an archetypal dyad. We can't be ourselves without being aware of other people. And if we are too aware of other people, we will lose ourselves. There are times in our life where we have to do and be exactly what we are, regardless of what other people think or want from us or project onto us. And there are other times in our lives where we have to avoid selfishness and consider ourselves as relational beings in desperate need of cooperation, intimacy, friendship, and harmony socially. So that's an archetypal dyad, again, that we are all balancing and learning to work with constantly. When a full moon in Libra comes up, it is as though we are at a kind of a diplomatic crossroads where the question of balancing opposites or working with different kinds of hard polarizations in our life will be part of the conversation. The essence of those polarizations will probably revolve around how much we should give, how much cooperation we should offer, how much compromise we should be available for, and how independent, assertive, self-willing, self-directed, sovereign, and self-contained we should be. There are a million different situations, particular contexts in which that dyad will play itself out. Sometimes they're in the workplace, sometimes they're happening philosophically. For example, people will frequently find themselves divided in debates about how responsible someone should be versus how responsible we ought to be for one another. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps versus where's the compassion and empathy and concern and helping of people who need help. That's a conversation I remember hearing, family members have in my extended family, over the dinner table. My grandpa was usually, Korean War vet. He was usually the one being like, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, and someone else would be like, what about charity? What about compassion? What about helping one another? And he would always be like, yes, but if it goes too far, people will never learn how to be independent and how to take care of themselves. And in parenting too, you'll hear parents talk about, you should, maybe you should sleep with your kids. No. Teach them how to be independent sleepers. If you sleep with them, it'll make them needy. No. It'll make them, it'll model healthy bonding, right? So the conversations can be had in the realm of parenting. They can be had socially in terms of how independent versus dependent we ought to be, with each other. In the communities that we live in. The conversations can take place in marriages. I just need my space. Just let me be me. Well, why can't you be more on board with us, with we, right? So they can happen there. And again, you can see it happening in religious communities, where there's the need for individual variations or diversity of faith expressions. Let people be different in how they express their faith. No, we ought to all do things similarly. We ought to be a unified social front in terms of how we express our faith and what and how we believe. There's, you can see it playing out in the workplace. I need space in which to, you'll see companies saying, if we give our employees a little bit more time and energy to be themselves and to have their own creative time and space, or if we put a ping pong table in this, this room or whatever, and allow people to bond with one another, then or if you give people to be more time to be more productive and independent and creative with their work versus always telling them what to do. So these kinds of conversations, again, can take place in just about any arena of our lives. The Libra Aries axis is not fundamentally about relationships and love versus independence. It's about dependence versus independence as an archetypal construct that can express itself in any area of life whatsoever. There's the cutting of the umbilical cord and the separation of the individual child into the world from the womb of the mother. And there is the continued need to be bonded with other people like we are bonded with our mothers. These are Venus-Mars dynamics on an archetypal level. So what I recommend for a full moon like this is to look at where those tensions are most obvious in your life right now. And I think it's always tempting with oppositions to want to collapse into one side of the opposition versus the other, to see things in black and white, and to look at the other, whatever the other is, or whatever the other point of view or perspective is, as an antagonizing opposite. And I think if we can move into not so much perfectly balancing things, but holding the tension of the opposites, that's when we tend to see that things work out, that we feel like we're growing, we're learning, that life becomes interesting and meaningful. Because The opposites don't cancel each other out like logical, contradictory opposites, but instead they somehow just coexist as a tension that we learn to live with. Okay, so that means that we have to learn how to be independent in our relationships while also recognizing the need for cooperation and dependence. Not all dependence means codependency, and not all independence means abandoning someone. So we can temper extremes in the way that we learn how to hold opposites. This is an important lesson for full moons in Libra and for the upcoming eclipses that we'll have over the next several years in these signs. Another really important thing to remember is that there's an aesthetic dimension to life. Aries is not as much concerned with the aesthetic dimension, meaning the ability to appreciate and admire. It's not that Aries is like ugly or unappreciative or something. It's not like Aries has no concern with beauty, but beauty is generally something that is shared in, and when you look at something that's beautiful, there's a sense that this beauty exists not just for you, but in some transcendent or transcendental way. It is beautiful, and so you're appreciating something other. And one of the easiest ways to step outside of ourselves, or to just check our egos and the tendency to stand too intensely inside of our own little bubbles, is to look at things with an aesthetic eye, rather than making judgments that relate back to me and my position and my values and my worth and my feelings and my being right. If we can look at things and say, how is that beautiful? And to do that from an archetypal perspective means to be curious and to be open and to be interested. And when we can appreciate and say, well, how is that beautiful? How is that a thing of beauty and truth? And we can assume that there is some beauty and truth there, because whatever we're looking at is a part of reality. And we can make an assumption that reality is by its very nature meaningful, interesting, true, beautiful. And that if we look at things from that perspective, it can take us out of the toxic elements of self-focus. And so that's one way that the Libra full moon can help us, is in any way in which we're stuck in our own rigid, self-centered position. How do we look upon something and be curious and open and interested in it? When people in our lives are changing, it's easy to say, well, how does that threaten who I am, or where I'm standing, or what I need from that person, or what I get from that person? But sometimes it's helpful when people are changing around us to become interested and curious, to become appreciative, to look at that person and the changes that they're making in their life from the standpoint of a curious and interested observer. And when you do that, you start to notice what's beautiful about something or someone else. And that'll soften your own fixed interests. And that's something that can really help us during a Libra full moon. Now, on the other hand, to be fair, sometimes we get stuck in like social evaluations and comparisons. We get stuck in feeling like, well, it's illegal to just be self-focused or self-centered, and that can be problematic too. And part of the balance of Libra and Aries, you could say, is also to make sure that we're not so trapped in social considerations that we don't ask ourselves, what do I want? What do I feel? Who am I? Right. So it can go too far in the opposite direction. But, with the Sun and Jupiter coming together in Aries right now and a full moon in Libra, I think that it's more likely that the Libra full moon can offer us a little bit of a check. How can I take an interest in other things as a way of releasing some of the more problematic parts of being too fixed or rigid in myself? One of the downsides of the element of fire is it is rigid. And so fiery people are often passionate and and excitable, but they'll mistake their charisma, energy, and passion for openness. And oftentimes fire is enthusiastic and like exciting, but not necessarily flexible. Fire was considered to be hot and dry. The dryness is where the rigidity comes from in fire. And Libra is moist and cool. an Aries sign, excuse me, hot and moist. And so you have the same heat, but you have moisture, you have flexibility. And so there's something about this full moon that can invite us to be flexible and to tone down our passions with curiosity and flexibility. Maybe what's needed right now. Jupiter and the sun can get pretty fired up. So anyway, these are just some rambling considerations. I hope they are useful for you. A brief video today, but I wanted to speak. Sometimes I find that, it's good for me once in a while to speak off the cuff rather than always having my notes prepared. And today I was like, you know what? I'm going to be flexible and we'll see where it goes. I hope this has been, again, useful for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. You can find a transcript of today's talk on the website, nightlightastrology.com, where if you go over, you can also check out the need-based tuition options and the new courses starting this June. Any questions, email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. So that is what we have for today. Happy full moon, everyone. Take it easy. Bye.